National.
Just moved in from France here or something.
Is this my seat? Oh, that's Deborah.
Oh,
Got it. Well, this
okay,
isn't.
that's me.
Okay.
See, I thought that was your
Christmas
chair.
right, good evening. This is Monday, December 4th, 2023, and we're here for a governing body meeting, and I will ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Mayor Dunn is present and presiding. Councilmember Asseltine.
Here.
Councilmember Kane.
Here.
Councilmember Sippel.
Here.
Councilmember Harrison.
Here.
Councilmember Larson.
Here.
Councilmember Rawlings.
Here.
Councilmember Phila.
Here.
Councilmember Osman.
Here.
All right, thank you. The next item of business is the Pledge of Allegiance, and we do have some scouts with us. And if you would like to come to the podium, and we will rise and face the flag, after which I will ask you to introduce yourselves and let us know your scout rank.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Scouts. Could you please tell us your name, your troop, and your scout rank?
I'm Ryan Skinner. I'm in Troop 218, and I'm a Life Scout.
Thank you.
My name's Lucas Skinner. I'm in Troop 218, and I'm a Life Scout.
So you're brothers? Are you twins? Well, we certainly appreciate your assistance this evening, and good luck on your road to Eagle.
Where is Troop 218?
It's out of Overland Park, Church of the Ascension.
Church of the Ascension.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
I also want to welcome all the Blue Valley North seniors. And good luck on your decisions of what you're going to do next year. Thank you for being here this evening. You picked a short meeting to attend.
How
for
many
your class.
North parent? There's one, there's one, there's one, there's one, there's one. All North parents.
Also Blue Valley North?
Go Mustangs. Go Mustangs is right.
Are you ladies also Blue Valley North?
Oh, there you
well,
go. Welcome.
We're glad that you're here. You didn't have a photo taken with us earlier, so maybe at the end. Thank you.
It's just like the dances. With the girls on the one side and the boys on the other.
The next item of business is the approval of the agenda. Having no modifications to the agenda this evening, I would entertain a motion to approve as printed, please.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion from Mr. Sipples, second from Mr. Asseltine. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
It's approved unanimously. Thank you. We have no citizens who've signed in to speak this evening. We have no proclamations. We have no presentations or recognitions. We move now to item 7A under special business. Conduct a public hearing and consider a resolution adopting the amended fiscal year 2023 annual budget for the city of Leawood, Kansas. And I would like to declare the public hearing open and ask, is there anyone here in the audience that would like to address us regarding these amendments? And if so, please raise your hand.
Seeing none and hearing none, I move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion from Ms. Phila to close public hearing, second from Mr. Asseltine. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. It's approved unanimously. Thank you. We now are going to consider adopting the amended fiscal year 2023 annual budget, and it is delineated under 7A. Mr. Cobby, not seeing Jana Raper with us this evening, do you have any comments you would like to make?
And I thank Gianna for taking care of this for me at the last meeting. This is essentially about a $550,000 increase just to the expenditure limit on the street improvement fund. It's a capital improvement fund, and in this case, because we've done it as a budgeted fund, when things get delayed and rolled over, We sometimes have to adjust for those. We were at one point hoping that wasn't going to be the case, but by the time we got everything caught up on project budgets and so forth, we felt like we knew for sure we would need some of this increase, and we increased enough so we won't have a problem. But no real change in the balances or anything. It's just a timing issue.
Thank you. I thought one sentence in this document, which was interesting to note for the record and in the minutes, is that the cost of asphalt and concrete have increased significantly, contributing to a 20% construction cost increase over this 2-year period. That is significant.
For those line items, absolutely, that's
Yes.
been the case.
Right. So we talk about it a lot, but to see it in black and white like that is pretty amazing.
Move to approve?
Motion from Ms.
Second.
Villa, second from Mr. Sippel. Any other discussion, any questions for Mr. Cobby? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Okay, it's approved unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Cobby. 7B is acknowledgement, and we've got something for you all to sign. So thank you, Mr. Powell. We have an acknowledgement of a $50,000 donation from former council member Lou Rasmussen and his son Kurt Rasmussen for a paved walkway path at Lee Wolf Dog Park. And I think many of you, if not all of you, will recall that Councilmember Rasmussen served from 1990 to 2016 on the city council. He had to go off the council when his wife needed some special care in the city of Olathe, which caused them to relocate. But he was always a huge fan of our Lee Wolf Dog Park. He and his dog Hershey frequented it often. And one of the items that was not funded when the dog park was put in, but was planned from the beginning, was to have a perimeter pathway. So you see the memo from Brian Anderson, and I don't know if, yes, Mr. Anderson's in the room, so we'll let him, if you wouldn't mind coming forward. I just wanted to mention how incredibly generous this is of Mr. Rasmussen and his son Kurt. Each gave $25,000 toward this $50,000 donation. So just great appreciation to them, and I'll let you speak to this plan, please.
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to. So, yeah, that was a very generous gift, as you mentioned. And, you know, I think Lou's time visiting the dog park, I think he observed that, you know, it would be nice to have a paved walkway that goes around the perimeter of the dog park. And so this gift would enable us to get started with that, I'm confident. And so we have put together a plan that's in your packets, and it shows a proposed layout that would form an internal loop inside the wooden fenced area and bring you back around to the turnaround that we have existing today. And plan right now is, I mean, if accepting the gift and we'll move forward with it, is we would put together a notice to bidders and go out for bid and get a contractor hired to start working on this. So.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your layout, and I did communicate the layout with Mr. Rasmussen, mailed it to him hard copy since he had no email. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Ms. Kane.
We talked about this at the Parks and Rec meeting, the last Parks and Rec meeting, and I too am enormously grateful for the generous contribution. And I know the dog park was Lou's baby, and he said it took him 9 years to get it done. And it's one of the, by far, one of the most used facilities we have in the city of Leawood. We talked at the Parks and Rec meeting, and I appreciate the fact that we may have to stagger this in phases, because as you read under budget information, it's going to cost us $10,000 just to get the site survey, and then it's going to likely cost the total construction cost is going to be more than the gift. And I'm ever sensitive, and so is Chuck, to the items that are on the Parks and Rec budget, and not having something jump the line just because all of a sudden this came out of nowhere. And I don't want it taking away, we're very sensitive to taking away from projects that have been in the queue a long time. So thank you for keeping that ever present in your mind. And if we have to stage it, we have to stage it. I don't want to take away from other things that have been waiting a long time for something that's, as generous it is, it came out of the blue at this point in time. Thank you.
Mr. Sippel.
Brian, when would you anticipate that this thing will be ready for citizens to use? I mean, the word will get out about this, and there's a lot of dog lovers in the town, and so what should we tell them in terms of when should it be ready to be used by dog owners?
So, well, we're starting to prepare the bid documents to get ready to bid this out. We've got a plan in place ready with specifications for what we want built. So, you know, however, it'll probably take us a couple months to get, you know, the bid opening and get everything finalized there and have a contract ready to come back to you for approval. And then I would say, I mean, a sidewalk like that, they could build that pretty quickly. One thing that is going to be a challenge, I think, is just access. The time it takes to get the concrete to that location. They may not be able to back a concrete truck off of College down our access road there, so they may have to buggy it back and forth, which will increase the time that it would take to finish it. And then I want to think about the weather too. It's better to pour concrete when it's not freezing.
You can't do that in the winter. I don't
more of a spring
imagine
thing.
December, January, February, you're not, but should we tell people by the 4th of July?
I would say that's reasonable. Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You've also got that possible force main situation.
Yeah. So,
Going on.
and you see that we actually had we've worked with the consultants there, and we have that tentative layout where you see it there on the plans. That's where they're designing it right now, how it would go. And so, I mean, there's, depending on what the bids are and how much we can do for this sidewalk, if it makes sense to stop, let's say, the dog park equipment, for example, for now, we may do that, and then the force main would go in, and then the sidewalk could go over it in the future. Or if we build our improvements and, you know, the force main's going in, it would have to be replaced, you know, when the time comes that it's gone in. If they damaged it, they'd have to put it back, is my opinion, so.
Yeah, we'll have to get that in writing.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. Your recommendation is that we accept the donation. That is the action we're asking you all to do, accept this generous donation. So I would entertain a motion for that.
Move to accept this very generous donation.
Second.
Motion from Ms. Kane, and I think second might have been Ms. Larson, possibly. And certainly, if indeed this comes to pass and we have a little celebration, we'll have to make sure Mr. Kurt Rasmussen does live in the city.
Okay.
So, I mean, in the greater metro. Mr. Lou Rasmussen now is out of state, so he probably won't be coming, but we'll certainly want to make sure that we invite him.
Sounds
So.
great.
All right, if there's no further discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. It's approved unanimously, and thank you, Mr. Anderson, for your work on this. All right, going now to consent agenda, items 8A through T. I would like to pull 8C, and I'll ask, is there anything else anyone would like to pull? Mr. Hazeltine?
Item 8I.
8I. Anything else? Ms. Fella?
H.
H. Anything else? All right, then a motion to approve the remaining items on the consent agenda, please.
Move for approval. Second.
Motion for Mr. Rawlings, second for Mr. Asseltine. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. It's approved unanimously. Thank you. 8C is accept the minutes of the 2012-2023 Parks and Recreation Advisory Board meeting. I pulled this off to direct you all to page 2 of the minutes, which is page 53 of the 483-page packet. And it's the statement from Ms. Claxton just above item C on that. And I wanted to ensure that those of you not part of the Leawood Foundation Board of Directors were aware that they increased their donated amount in private dollars to the bathroom project to $250,000. At one point, it was $205,000 for quite a while. And at a meeting, 2 meetings ago, they decided to add another $45,000 to that. And it was just extremely generous, and I really just wanted to make sure everybody saw it. So we do appreciate them and the work they do to raise private dollars for these public-private partnership items. So with that, I would entertain a motion to accept those minutes, please.
Move to accept the minutes. Second.
Motion from Ms. Kane and second from Ms. Larson. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. It's approved unanimously. Thank you. 8H is a resolution accepting new GASB 34 public infrastructure in accordance with GASB 34 guidelines of reporting inventory of assets for property related to the Aventino public improvements. Ms. Phillip.
Thanks very much. I have really no questions unless we might impose upon David Lay to explain GASB to our students in the group. But I found when you look at this finished asset that's being converted onto our assets as a city, stormwater over $1 million, streets $1.7 million for a total of $2.8 million. So when you think about the fact that streets and stormwater sewers are very expensive parts of construction for our houses. And I think it's one of those things you really don't understand. And everything about what I've really learned here is that infrastructure in a city is really, really critical. And I don't know, David, if you might want to give a 2-minute explanation about how GASB came about in case any future accountants or financial people might be going down that path. Or
I
maybe
think
should have
Mr. Lay wanted Mr. Coffey to give the explanation.
It's more for a financial reporting to the federal government, so we report on all the assets of the city. So when we have a developer come in, such as for Aventino, they build the streets, the storm sewer, and the street lighting. Once those items are constructed, we then put a value to that of the actual construction cost, and we have to report it to the finance department, who reports that to the federal government.
And so, Don, you want to share with us what happens to when the federal government gets all this data?
Well, it's a little bit of everything. The GASB is the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, so they set the requirements that most cities try to operate by. And as part of our accounting practices, we account for all the assets of the city and then depreciate them over time. This language, I think, that's been used for this item just says that this is something that's being added to those assets that we will account for, and you'll see in our financial report at the end of the year, our comprehensive report, it has those added on, and it'll have that depreciation figured in. So it's something we do with every project.
Do you roughly know how many assets we have to report on at the end of a year?
Normally, it's the number of projects we have, and then if we've added some equipment, large equipment or things that would fit on that. So a handful of projects, so 10, 15 projects per year.
What would be the grand total of the city's assets?
Oh my gosh, now you put me on the spot. I believe it's in the multiple millions, hundreds of millions. I would have to look, but it's, all the buildings, all the streets, and everything else with depreciation figured in. So it is.
I was just saying.
It is in our annual report, and I'd be happy to look it up and send it
Thank
to
you,
you.
thank you. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but when you think about all of that, those assets, and that's just what, a 1 square block, it's really kind of overwhelming to think about how many assets we've put into place as a city. Thank you very much. Move to approve.
Second.
Motion from Ms. Phila to approve and second from Mr. Sippel. Any other discussion? Mr. Hazeltine?
Since we're
Is your mic
educate
on?
our youth-
Is your microphone on?
Since we're trying to educate our youth and for edification, if any of you have taken an accounting course, and I think you have to take one, if you hear the term FASB, or Financial Accounting Standards Boards, that's for the private sector, and then this GASB, the Government Accounting Standards Boards, is for the public sector. And there are different standards that apply to both, because we're not in it to make a profit, so it's a whole different thing. So, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. It's approved unanimously. Thank you. 8I is a resolution amending the city's special benefit district assessment policy as amended on May 15th, 2023, and repealing resolution number 6020. Mr. Hazeltine.
Thank you, Mayor. I've never seen this before because, and I think the reason I've never seen it before is it's much cheaper for the government to finance something than it is a private entity, because the bonds that we issue are tax-free, so they're lower interest. And I just thought, well, why is that? And so I started reading through this, and it seems like we have some pretty steep fees and potential fees. And I may have another question here for our finance director. But in the very last page, says non-refundable fee of $3,000, so accompany all special benefit district petitions, which I understand that. But at the very end, it says, in addition, the city may charge an administrative fee not to exceed 5% of the total cost of the project?
That's in the statute. That comes from the Kansas.
Oh, that's
Special
directly
Benefit-
from the statutes.
That
Wow.
allows the
Because
city
I'm
to do
thinking,
that.
if you've got a $100 million project, we could potentially charge him $5 million, which answers my question: why would he privately finance this when he could do special benefit district tax-free bonds? And so that's the answer. I just wanted to know if that was, but that's a statute.
Yes, and that language at the end is new as well. I believe the developer we're discussing, who will come back before the city council in a future date to be more specific on the development
Right.
agreement, was interested in this because if this developer does it with special obligation bonds, he does not need to put up our 35% cash guarantee, and he can use that 35% or whatever money's
Right.
tied up in it immediately and not have to worry about that part of it.
Which is why he's foregoing the whole tax-free
At
bond
least,
thing.
that would be at least part of it.
Yeah. So for further educational purposes, cities are instrumentalities of the state, and when they have a law, we have to comply with it. We make our own ordinances for our own municipality, but if state law supersedes that, move to approve, Mayor.
Second.
A motion from Mr. Hazeltine, a second from Mr. Sippel. I do see Mr. Atterbury is on Zoom, I guess. Is Mr. Wimpy also on Zoom?
He is not. He welcomed his second son yesterday, so he decided to take the night off, which is probably a good choice.
It's probably appropriate, yeah. But Mr. Atterbury, seeing you here, and thank you. I know that you worked with our staff on this document, and you are recommending it as well. I just wanted to give you the opportunity to speak if you'd like.
No, certainly I agree that this is a nice addition to your policy, and gives developers, one more option if they have the resources to finance their project in this manner as opposed to a traditional special benefit district manner.
Very good, thank you. And I hope you'll pass on our congratulations to Mr. Wimpy and his family. Yeah. Okay, any other questions about this? All right, if not, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Okay, it's approved unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Arterberry, for joining us. We'll move now to the mayor's report. And first of all, in my haste to adjourn our city council meeting in time for the Chiefs game 2 weeks ago, which was a better game than last night's game, I neglected to congratulate those who were newly elected to the Leawood governing body. And first, congratulations to Mayor-elect Mark Elkins, who's actually here in the audience. I know you'll do a wonderful job, Mr. Elkins, and thank you for being here. As well as congratulations to Ward 1 City Council Member-elect Alan Sunkel, who's also here. And Ward 2 Member-elect Sherry Guyed. I don't believe Sherry's joined us this evening. Ward 3 Council Member, not elect, Lisa Harrison, who ran unopposed. Congratulations on that.
Landslide.
And Ward 4 Council Member-elect Dr. Steve Casters. So I just want to thank all of you for your willingness to serve. Greatly appreciated. I was joined by City Council members Deborah Filla and Mary Larson at a Leawood Chamber ribbon cutting for KC Aerial Arts, who are located in Town Center Plaza. They are just to the south of the old Bravo patio dining, if you know where that is. And this was a celebration of their 10th anniversary in Leawood, which I had not realized that they'd been here that long. But they're relatively new chamber members, thus the ribbon cutting. They were the ones who participated in and performed at our Leawood 75th anniversary celebration. Very talented group, and we wish them much further continued success. I want to thank Director Parks, Recreation, and Arts, Chris Claxton, and her team for completing the work on our Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Bridge dedication, which sits just north of City Hall. There's a beautiful monument in his honor. I hope you will all take time to go look at. Council members Lisa Harrison, Chuck Sipple, and James Azeltine join me with all department heads and leadership staff, and Henry Lyons, who is a Leawood resident and the president of the NAACP of Olathe, Overland Park, and Leawood, was also present and greatly admired the beautiful plaque honoring Dr. King. In the Leawood Chamber Arena, there is a new inaugural Leadership Leawood class that has just been announced. It's a 9-session program, and we have Captain Brad Robbins of the Leawood Police Department. Captain Robbins, thank you for your willingness to participate. And Michelle Cricks from the City of Leawood's Planning Department. Also, interestingly, Matt Peppas was chosen as one of the new participants. So we thank them all for their willingness to partake in this interesting project. Congratulations also are in order for Director of Planning Mark Klein, who celebrated 24 years of service with Leawood on Wednesday. Quite a milestone. And did you just now walk in the room? Just on cue. That was perfect. Perfect. So thank you. Congratulations. Time flies when you're having fun, doesn't it? That concludes my mayor's report. We have no council members' reports this evening. Ms. Stoddard, do you have any city administrator report?
I don't have any report, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Now going to staff reports. 12A, a presentation on the governing body's goals of reviewing diversification of lot sizes and setbacks for new single-family development and determining if amendments to the Leawood Development Ordinance are necessary. Mr. Klein.
Mayor, I was just going to bring up a PowerPoint real quick. There are slides or copies in your packet as well. And staff has been looking as far as at the governing body goal with regard to taking a look at the diversification of lots for a single family to see if maybe there's something that needs to be changed in the development ordinance. We did take a look as far as the different sizes that we have right now, and the smallest lot size that we currently have is RP2 for single family, and it's 6,000 square foot per lot. So we are going a little bit less than that and taking a look at maybe 5,000 square foot or 4,500 square foot lots. And we have talked about it with the Planning Commission with regard to get their opinion on it. And so we started looking at this, and one of the ones that really kind of came up was New Longview, which the governing body and the Planning Commission had that joint work session that was out at the golf course, and with some of those examples, and they seemed fairly popular back then as far as some good comments and everything. So we did take a look at that. We also looked around at other parts of the country, and we found one in Utah that we were looking at as well. And so part of what we're kind of curious about is, percentage cost of the land. How much is that of the total cost? And so we found something that indicated as far as nationally it'd be 21.4% of the overall cost of the land. So then we kind of went to our GIS system and started plugging that in to see what we would come out with, and we are coming out overall 23.2, so it was pretty close. We did notice that, as you go down in lot size, it seems like the land becomes a little bit less than what it was on the previous one. So like R1 lots that are 15,000 square feet per acre minimum, the land was 25.09%, but in RP2, where it was 6,000 square foot, the land was about 19.69%. And these are just some of the examples with regard to the type of development that we were talking with the Planning Commission. And when we started talking with regard to the smaller lot sizes, they indicated they really wanted to see kind of a design element to it. And so instead of just having a single family lot that was smaller that you could do pretty much anything on that you can currently do, they liked as far as kind of this new urbanism kind of look where you had the houses that were all pulled up to a build line. So rather than a setback line where you have a minimum 35-foot setback, but you could be located 45-foot if you wanted to, and you have that ability to do that. This would be a build-to line. So the build-to line would actually require that you come up to, say, we had a 15-foot setback on the front yard, and so all of the buildings would have to be along there, creating kind of a uniform frontage of the street, which actually has kind of a dramatic look, and that's a little bit different. They also indicated that they would like to see some elements, for instance, like front porches or something be required as part of it. We also looked as far as maybe an alley. The Planning Commission indicated that that was something that they would be open to. Really what the alley would do for you is that you have that access into the back behind the house, and then your garage would be located in the back of it. And so you wouldn't have like all the driveways that are curb cuts onto the street. And so it kind of creates a much kind of neater appearance, much more smooth. And so we did take a look at that. We talked to the fire department. You'd have to have a minimum of 20 foot wide as far as that alley would go. But we also wanted to make sure that if you were parking a car there and it wasn't in the garage, we want to make sure that there was enough setback there that the car wouldn't be sticking out in the alley. If you had a trash truck or an emergency vehicle or something like that come through, we wanted to make sure that that part would be clear.
But the garage would still be attached in that instance?
We currently have, as far as we are looking at all attached garages.
Okay.
And that's current with the ordinance that we have now, so we were thinking that that part wouldn't change. And on most of these, you'd enter off the back as far as if it was an alley. If it was on a street where you had a driveway come into it, then typically it would be probably a side entry garage, and we have an example of what that would be as well. And again, these are just more photos, just kind of indicating as far as the style of house. Again, you'd have a front porch element. You'd have a build-to line where it'd pull them up. We are proposing 15-foot front yard setback, so it would be closer to the street. And this is one where if you're coming off the street, as far as if you had a corner lot with a driveway that comes through, which is that's done quite a bit today as well. This is an example of where they actually had some bulb outs where at the intersections they brought as far as extended the sidewalks out a little bit further to reduce the amount of space that you'd have to walk in between. And then what that did also is it kind of created a lane that was right here as far as if cars wanted to park out front, and then you wouldn't have the issue as far as, larger cars or a fire truck or something like that going through on that street. That'd be more out of the way. And I believe this is the one that was in South Jordan, Utah, called Daybreak. And it was very similar to the one that was in New Longview.
All I had to do was wait.
And here's, again, the alleys. Now, if you had the alleys, you'd probably want, as far as yards, and so fencing would probably create kind of your private space that was back there. And for instance, this is an example where they have the fence, privacy fence that would enclose the rear yard, just again for some of that privacy. On trash day, you would have, as far as the trash trucks would come out, and the trash cans would be on the alley instead of out on the public street. And these are just more examples of alleys. Another thing that, oh, sure.
So that no, not that one, that one.
Okay.
So if you look at it, on the left-hand side, well, maybe it's because that one's on the end, but the driveway is facing the alley, or what I'm assuming is the alley, right?
Yes.
But on the right-hand side, do I see that that's somebody's front yard? Or am I looking at that?
Actually, I think these are still backyards that are here, and this is the alley, and I think the houses kind of face out the other way. This one does have a porch on it, though. It does make it look a lot like it was the front of a building. And then this would be a driveway that would be going into this house that was located here.
So it just happens to be the angle we're looking at it, that it's
Yeah.
actually, okay, thank
And
you.
the architectural element that they have on the housing. Another thing that was talked about is as far as amenity areas, the Planning Commission wanted to ensure as far as that there was like a central gathering area. They were really primarily interested in make sure that it was central so everybody could get to it fairly easy as opposed to being located off to the side. And so these are some examples that was in South Jordan as far as Daybreak of some open space that was kind of a central gathering area. And here they have kind of like a little amphitheater created as far as with the topography of the land. And then this is an example of a trail that kind of would take you through kind of the center gathering area with the houses kind of flanking on either side. We looked at as far as kind of a comparison, and so in New Longview, the average lot size, or the average home size was about 2,500 square feet. And over in Daybreak, it was kind of ranged between 1,700 and almost 4,000 square feet. So some of the houses could still get fairly large. The lot sizes were larger than what we're looking at. The one in Daybreak was a little bit closer as far as the average lot size was just over 5,000 square feet. What we did find on the price points, what we were really kind of hoping is that this would create kind of a more affordable option as people move out of their larger homes and kind of want more maintenance provided. However, it seemed like whenever we were kind of comparing these with the surrounding houses that were more traditional around it, they actually seemed like they were just as expensive and a lot of times more expensive. And I think part of that is that they were more desirable, and so there did seem to be a market for it. And then possibly as far as using bonusing was another thing that we thought about as far as to encourage the developers to do some of this. And one of the things as far as increased green space, or if you had sustainable features that were part of it, or an internal pedestrian circulation system, maybe there would be bonuses that you could get as far as for the density, the height, and the parking requirements. Currently, right now, RP2 and RP3 is the 6,000 square foot per lot, which is 7.26 dwelling units per acre. If you went to the 5,000 square foot lots, you'd be about 8.7 dwelling units per acre. And if you went down to the 4,500 square foot lots, it'd be about 9.7 dwelling units per acre. So it would definitely be a little bit more dense. However, if you started taking into account as far as maybe a central green area that was in there as well, then that would probably make the overall density less as far as the overall subdivision. So again, this is just something, a summary as far as the different things we looked at, as far as the alleyways, the smaller setbacks, smaller unit sizes, increased density with bonusing, and open space requirements. Open space requirements we are keeping the same as far as a minimum of 30%. And these are statements that we heard from the Planning Commission with regard to, they seem like they're supportive as far as the smaller lot size. They did want less rentals, more ownership, primarily single-family homes. In fact, I think they settled on just single-family homes. The height would be limited to 2 stories, and then lots can accommodate smaller buildings, maybe about 2,500 square feet. Have a larger setback as far as from existing residential. So that's something that you've seen in the ordinance right now with regard to commercial adjacent to residential. We have a residential setback at 75 feet for office and 125 feet for retail from existing. And then allow small neighborhood retail development. That, I think, would get a little bit more complicated. I know that they kind of expressed a desire if you could have the ability to have like a corner shop, coffee shop, or something like that. That would be great. But then we'd need to take a look as far as on the mixed use aspect of that. And then the proposed zoning classification we were looking at was just, as far as the name to call it right now, RP2A, which would be a planned cottage home, single-family residential district, again, between 4,500 and 5,000 square feet for the lots, which are intended to be more compact and have a distinctive look to them. And we'd want them to be within the medium-density residential, as outlined in the comp plan. This is the regulations. They're mirrored on both sides as far as the 4,500 and the 5,000 square foot. So again, to build 2-line, 15 feet, that would bring the houses up closer. Currently, right now, RP2 has a minimum of 30-foot setback. So this would be half of that. Side setback, 7.5 feet. You've seen that on a number of different developments that have come through. It's usually asked for as a deviation. We don't really allow them to go any closer than that because the fire department kind of indicated that triggers some things such as sprinkling, and then Public Works also indicated that they wouldn't want them any closer than that as well. Corner lot setback is 20 feet, which matches the RP2, and then we'd have a minimum frontage of 50 feet. Currently, RP2 really doesn't have any minimum frontage. However, R1 and RP1 have a minimum of 100 feet for the frontage. And then rear setback 15 feet. The 15-foot is to ensure that a car could fit in between the garage and then also if it was coming off an alley, so it wouldn't project out into the alley. The open space would be the same as far as 30% that we currently have. And then we are also thinking as far as the height of the buildings would be 35 feet, which is what we also have within the development ordinance for single family. Then the front porches, trying to discourage as far as having the garage be the dominant feature on the street. Again, looking at attached garages only just to match as far as what our current code is. And then still having the parking requirement of minimum of 2 enclosed parking spaces per unit. And also providing gathering areas or trails to create kind of like this central gathering area.
Mark, what's a snout house?
A snout house is where you've probably seen some where the front of the house where the door sits back, but the garage projects out in front. And so it's just a term, the
I get it.
It's an architectural term.
And so also, with regards, these are just a summary of the different features that it would have as far as the front porches and then the attached garages and also as far as the depth to be able to park a car and the central gathering area. This would be example as far as on a street where you had an alley. So you have the house that's located there. It's at its 15-foot build-to line, and then the alley runs behind, and you can see as far as this is where the parking would come in, so they'd come in on the alley and then into here. If you did have a situation where you wanted them to not have an alley, you'd have the driveways coming off of the main street. One way to kind of minimize that is to have shared driveways. And so instead of having 20 or 30 feet for each driveway that would go in, a shared driveway, you could have 20 feet and kind of save some of that area that was located there. I think when we were talking to the Planning Commission with regard to this one, however, they had concerns that it might create some tensions with neighbors and things like that with the shared driveways, as far as maybe, I don't know, shoveling snow, or if you weren't getting along with your neighbors. So they did kind of bring that up. And we were thinking as far as maybe some form-based tools that are part of it. And really the form-based tools, it just gets more into the features as far as elements that would be required for the development to give it more of a presence on the street. It looks at the public frontage and it gives you more regulations to ensure you're getting the product that you're looking for. For instance, if you were thinking that you have the smaller lot, but you didn't have the requirement for the front porches, then they could build anything, including a snout house. However, a form-based code, you'd have something where you actually have a build-to line that was located there. There'd be a requirement as far as the front porch had to dominate as far as the street frontage. And so it's just different items that it would specifically tailor to that the developer would have to meet. So there wouldn't be that chance that you might get something other than what you were looking for originally. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Klein, where are you envisioning the location for these possible?
I think that,
developments?
some of them could actually probably go along with the 135th Street corridor. It's part of like maybe a mixed-use development, might be one area where you could actually see that as a component of it. I think that there are some smaller lots that you are kind of within the city. I believe there's one at 135th and Row that's about 20 acres. That might be an area that you could do something like that.
And is there a spot on 143rd as well?
Yes, 143rd, and I think it's Row. There's a vacant lot. There's 5 acres, so a total of 10 acres that's there. That's a little bit east of where St. Michael the Archangel Catholic Church is and school.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Rollins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple of years ago, I took a field trip along with Councilman Sippel and Scott Lambers, and we went and looked at some of these new developments, Longview and Lee Summit, and also a Hunt Midwest development in North Kansas City. had brownstones and the very two concepts that you are, and the planning commission is looking at. So kudos, because I think when we drove around the Longview, with the alleys in the back, there were people sitting out on their front porch, actually neighbors sitting out on the front porch, and mothers going up and down with their strollers, or people walking. In the back of the alley, there was an advantage is all the trash bins were in the alley and not out in the front. And so there was the walkability of the sidewalks, not going across driveways. And I just thought this concept was really neat. And I thought, gee, I wish we could do something like that. So the presentation that you're making and also what the Plan Commission is thinking about and recommending, in my opinion, is spot on. And also, there was lots of green space that was there, common areas for green space, walkability from their homes. And then as far as the retail was concerned, and this is in Longview, there was a node or something of a coffee shop, a pizza shop, a couple little small retail things that were serving the shops that were serving the community. I thought, this is really nice, you know. So, and then in North Kansas City, you know, Hunt Midwest, they don't do anything cheaply, you know, and it was really well laid out with green space, brownstones, front porches again, people talking with each other, and I just think this is something that I would be excited about, and I would encourage those of you that may have some doubts or really can't conceptualize some of this change, a possibility for change, go take a field trip. Go out and look at Longview. Go to North Kansas City, or maybe get the Leawood bus and have a field trip, you know, and go see it all together. But it's really, really interesting, and I think it'll open up your eyes on what this presentation is. I think it's spot on.
Thank you.
Yeah, I took the similar field trip, and you're right. You're correct. Mr. Sipple, Ms. Kane, and Ms. Fella.
Thank you. Mark, I've got a couple of questions. We have a development in North Leawood around 98th and Aberdeen, or 98th and Chadwick, some very modest, small little ranch homes in there. Are those RP2, or was that put in before we had these zoning structures? They're on small lots.
And the ones that are up north, they tend to be on RP4, which is a zoning district that no longer exists.
Okay.
We call RP4 now planned apartment house, and the old RP4 used to be planned cluster development. And so what it would do is it allow both attached and detached homes to be within the same area. But I've seen a number of those, and it seems like they're usually at RP4.
Would the fire hydrants be in the alleyway or on the front street?
You know, that's something that we'd have to work out with the fire department. They indicated that if they were going to use that alley for fire service, then it would have to be a minimum of 20 feet. Right. However, if it was possible to service the buildings from the street, they could do that as well.
Well, I just wondered if the developer or the water department would have to put in one in the front and one in the back, which would add to the cost, so.
And that's something that we'd have to take a look at.
For the ones in Lee Summit, for instance, would visitors be able to park in the alley, not on the pad in front of the garage behind the home, but on the alleyway itself like they would parallel parking on a street? Do you know how that would work? If you'd have a party and you'd have, 6 or 8 cars.
And that's what we probably would not want to happen, just in case 20 foot isn't very wide. And so if you had somebody parking in the alley and then you had an emergency vehicle needed to access the alley, that would block them. So that's the reason why we were trying to make those driveways deep enough. So you could have the 2 cars that are in the garage, and you could also have 2 more that were parked behind without extending out into the alley. And then I would imagine if you had more than that, it'd probably have to be on the street parking.
I would imagine if we would consider something like this on 135th Street, we would require basements.
Yes, we require basements
So
or
would
a
that-
FEMA safe room on all of the houses.
Okay, and that would be part of the square footage?
Correct.
Okay. Well, my last question is, what do the developers think about this concept? Do we have any feedback from any of the,
We've asked a couple of developers, and they actually seem like they were fairly positive.
okay?
They had some suggested, they said Shoal Creek was another place that we should look at, which I think is what you were referring to. So we didn't, it's for the most part
No
positive,
pushback.
yeah.
I would think that there's more of a margin on $1 million house than there is on a $500,000 house. But if you build more $500,000 houses, the person could come out whole. So anyway, okay, thank you very much.
Ms. Kane?
I'm not clear what we're being asked to do tonight on this subject.
You know, we just took a look at the issue to see if that's something that the governing body would want us to pursue. So really, just tonight is, if this isn't something that the governing body is interested in, it probably would just kind of end here. But if you would like us to go further, then we continue to work with the Planning Commission to develop an actual zoning district that would have these features to it.
Thank you for that. So for the sake of the minutes, and assuming that the Planning Commission will get our minutes if they need to hear this again, the one thing, as Mayor Dunn said, the first thing I would be is where would this be allowed? Because if it's along 135th, that's an overlay, then I can see that. But if it all of a sudden is popping here, there, all over the city, then we're running into what Prairie Village is running into. And they're having strokes in Prairie Village. If you guys read the Blue Valley Times about all of a sudden, you know, rezoning and spot zoning. And so I would be extremely cautious if we come up with an RP2A all of a sudden and it's citywide. The way it's written is can be citywide. Anyway, I would be very cautious about where this is allowed specifically. I agree with the Planning Commission. I'm all about less rentals. I'm all about more ownership. In single-family homes, I agree with them about the height. Our future mayor, Elkins our future mayor Elkins out in the audience tonight, talked about density. Again, I'm not opposed to this concept of the smaller and more dense, but the fact that if our concept is to make a more affordable house, but we cannot legislate the prices of these things. If you read in the minutes, then just what's happening, you said it, and I didn't realize Regents Park, did you read that in the minutes? They went from 600, now they're $1.2 million, and they're attached. So if we can't legislate, if our purpose is more affordable, if that's our purpose, but we don't have a way to ensure that they are indeed affordable, then again, I'm on the lane of an abundance of caution, because we may be shooting ourselves in the foot and not getting where we want to get. If indeed they are affordable, then they're affordable. But if it, you know, I don't know what's a 500,000 is affordable, 600, 700. That's, I don't know who that's affordable to, you know, if we're talking general public. I wonder too, I know I grew up in the Chicago suburb area. We had lots of alleys everywhere, and they're not necessarily attached garages, which allows a better backyard. So I wouldn't be opposed to at least looking at options where perhaps the garage isn't attached, because then that allows the homeowner to actually have a yard, and then the garage is more in the back. So I've seen that work really well, and have nieces and nephews living in those in the Chicago area, and it's really nice. The shared driveway is a concept. We have it all over Leawood. Mayor Dunn's development is got shared driveways that can be very successfully done, I think, in my opinion. I'm wondering too, are they maintenance provided? Because to your point about shoveling snow or something, if they're maintenance provided, then that issue goes away. It may make for better neighbors. And I guess those were my notes for the moment. But if we're not necessarily taking an action tonight, I just wanted to, for the record, have Planning Commission understand where my brain is anyway after reading these materials. But I appreciate it. I'm not opposed. I just want to make sure that our what we intended is what we get, and we're not backdooring something we end up not wanting at all.
And you're
in our
correct,
city.
we didn't really find where it was more affordable, which would be great, and that's what we were kind of hoping to find. But it seemed like they would go for as much, if not more.
Yeah.
Well, and it just so happens that reality today, everything has skyrocketed.
Oh, no, understood.
So
But
if you're going to get new, which
Yeah.
these would be new, they're going to be expensive.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
what your research showed.
Yeah, understood.
Ms. Villa and Mr. Osmond.
Oh, thank you very much. I just want to say kudos. I was also on the field trip to Longview, and it was a lovely neighborhood. And so the possibilities there, I'm glad we're pursuing. I would ask, is 2,500 square feet really, could we go smaller? Because I have neighbors that are in Old Leawood that have retired to homes that are 1,700 square feet. And she says it's small, but she says it's just the two of them and it works very well. They have a very, very nominal backyard, and they have a bigger front yard because it's where we are in Old Leawood. But I wouldn't hesitate to look at even going another iteration, or maybe even looking at row houses where you are getting the trade-off with more green space, and you have smaller front yards and backyards because you have you have community gardens, et cetera. So I also shared Julie's appreciation for alleys. Friends that lived here and went to Nashville had shared or had their alley, which also becomes a de facto great place to kick ball and throw balls and everything else because there's no traffic back there. So I didn't realize that would, in essence, turn out to be a small playground for kids. And not having attached garages, it's not convenient for maybe the homeowner, but if it works out, I'd be amenable to that as well. I was going to ask, when you get into these alleys and shared driveways, does that overall, you talked about curb cuts, et cetera, from the front, and it's going to be less traffic for kids. You won't have kids, you can run up and down the sidewalk because you don't have to worry about a car turning in on you, right? And riding your bike.
Correct.
So I love that idea. But I'm thinking, but is it true that you will have less concrete than if you do individual driveways?
And that's something we'd like to take a look at. I know when we talked with Public Works, they kind of indicated that they thought probably the alley would provide more concrete than having the individual. But it's something that we'd actually like to kind of sketch out and see what we can see as far as the difference.
Yeah, and I thought 2.5, might be excessive, because if you're trying to downsize, maybe 2 is enough, and maybe you just get one car and storage, and you start to share. And plus, there's some of those really little cars now that look like they're actually golf carts. They're that small, but they're enclosed. And then the last thought I had was that Jim Rawlings had just mentioned something that was in one of the local newspapers about pre-approved building permits, that if we go down this path, maybe we can streamline the building permit process for the developers and residents to be. Thanks for all the work, and I think you're on a roll.
Mr. Osmond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mark, very impressed with the initial plan. I truly think that, in the 40s and 50s, that there were Cape Cod homes, smaller lots, neighbors right next to each other. You see that in Prairie Village, in older parts of Leawood and Kansas City, Missouri. And as suburban happens, the sprawl, we get bigger. And now we're trying to go smaller. And I think that there is a demand there. I think that just like where I live in the area around the cloisters, the smaller lots, they have maintenance free, where the HOA takes care of all the outside stuff. It's a definite positive. But if you're asking tonight for our feedback, my recommendation would be, let's sit on it, and I'm going to tell you why. By just us saying through the media and to the developer community that we're open for business, we as the city are not in the development stages. We as a collective body and staff are giving recommendations on 7-foot, 10-foot, 15-foot setbacks, but they're logistical issues that as a developer, you think more of liability, accessibility, what do residents actually want? We could all say we love the drive lane in an alleyway, but then how do you deal with the trash truck that comes through on a weekly basis and after 2 years trashes the alleyway? Whose responsibility is that? Is it the homeowner? Is the HOA? These are long-term things that truly have to be hashed out. And so, again, we could sit up here and say what we like and don't like. I think the true thing is just basically say, hey, we're very receptive to creating this new concept, but the developers are actually the one that builds it, puts the money out there, and gets the buyers at these price points. And so I don't want to say, let's go down the road and have 5 work sessions on it, but like tonight, getting the word out. So the Hunt Midwest or whomever can say, you know what, I found this 20-acre lot in Leawood. Let's start playing around now that we know that we could get smaller setbacks, front lot lines, things like that. So that's just my comment.
Okay, thank you.
And before we go to Ms. Larson, I just want to mention that I had a conversation with Mr. Klein similar to that, and I'll make the rest of my comments after Ms. Larson because I'm coughing. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. The new Longview community, if I remember correctly, that was built pre-COVID.
Yes.
We talked about that pre-COVID. Yes. And so when I'm looking at the pictures, the things that occur to me are now we have a new premium on outdoor living space. And when I'm looking at these depictions and the pictures of the homes, that's something that's kind of missing. You've got the front porch, but sometimes maybe you don't want to be, waving to 20 people walking by. You want to be on your patio grilling and with an outdoor television. That kind of is a missing element to me for this. And then the second thing, what age group, if we're thinking empty nesters, I don't know that second story design is going to be that appealing for that group. It might be more appealing for young professionals who are running up and down the stairs, but for an older age group, they're thinking long-term if they're going to downsize, and maybe that second story isn't as appealing as a one-level patio home that has a patio. Just some things to think about. I'm all in on ownership as opposed to rental, height restrictions. I like the build to the line idea, if that could be incorporated into more of a one-level patio home. I mean, I love the looks of these. They're very attractive, but I think the practicality of it now with the age and outdoor living, I see those as hurdles. At least that's what I would be thinking about if I were looking at living in one of these. Trying to think any other notes. I had a question. How many square feet are in an acre?
43,560.
I just Googled that.
Oh, I'm sorry, 43,560.
40?
Okay, that helps me to picture more.
Wow.
What is 5,000 square feet?
It's like a little over 200 by 200.
So, okay.
It's called small.
It's small, yes.
Yeah.
Which I'm envisioning if a developer is considering building these, they would be maintenance provided community and that type of thing. But I also understand Andrew's point that, you know, the developer knows what works financially. And we can all hope that if some of this housing is built, it's financially feasible for a lot of people. The prices have just been skyrocketing, and which is the biggest hurdle to downsizing right now. So anyway, those are my thoughts.
And what I started to say before I started coughing is that in my conversation with Mr. Klein before this evening, I think the thought was if the majority of the governing body wanted to have this almost on the books, so to speak, but he was not recommending, and nor would I recommend, or I think you recommend, that we go out and rezone some of these empty tracts of land to be, in fact, this new zoning. And then a developer has to come in and do it, or not do it, and then we've got this. So I think it was more to have it available if there's a will and a willingness. I've got Mr. Asseltine, but go ahead, finish your
Just
thought
real
first.
quick, my point was, if we're going to come up with these stipulations, and let's say it's 7.5 feet as our setbacks, and some developer has just a phenomenal plan that's 6 feet, or as Mary's saying, instead of front porches, you have the backyard living area with a barbecue and a television or something that's an outdoor. You know, these are things that, you know, all of a sudden, do you have to rezone? Do you have to amend your criteria? So it's best to just have the developer work with, or developers come up with these criteria as well.
Okay.
Mr. Asseltine and Ms. Harrison.
Yeah, I'm all for housing diversification. I went out to Longview. I was very intrigued as well by this style and how it, you know. But I do kind of agree with Julie's cautionary tale about what has happened in other cities. And so it's like we've had, you know, the one development code throughout the city, and then about the time I came on the council, it was all breaking loose up north about the tear down rebuilds, and it's still, you know, hasn't completely died down. And so if there's any way to implement this in our, you know, our development ordinance, maybe, I don't know, I do like the idea of being able to just have it on the shelf, you know, and not impose it on certain areas or whatever. But if there's a way of implementing it into, well, I guess if you did put it on the shelf, they could use it in like a mixed-use type of situation, couldn't they?
And that was one of the things that we were thinking, that it could actually be part of a mixed use to where, you know, you have the single family, and that way it's a much better transition than
Yeah.
just going right into the.
And I don't know if this is possible, but if there is any way to implement this in such a way to avoid what Julie was talking about, that'd be great. So.
And we were thinking, as far as if you really wanted to kind of target where these areas would go, then the comprehensive plan would then be used as far as to indicate where the city would be interested in this happening. Again, it's a guide, but it does show the developers where you want to take a look at it. And then when they came in, they would have the opportunity to kind of target those areas.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's worth pursuing.
Thank you. Ms. Harrison.
Thank you. I made a presentation to the governing body over a year ago at Mr. Lambert's suggestion about this very topic, and so I'm 100% behind this, and I worry that if we just put it on the shelf, that it won't ever happen, that the developers won't spend the money to build a plan if we haven't said, we're going to allow this, we have a zone, and here's what it's called. I don't feel like we need to dive into the minutia of alleys and 7.5 feet, some of the things that have been mentioned, but if we say we're going to allow smaller homes on smaller lots, and here are those numbers, and how you build it, whether it's a one-story, because I do think there's great value in that. Anybody with bad hips doesn't want stairs, or knees, I guess, is also the problem. So, you know, I know my dad needs one-story patio home, but in Chicago suburbs where they all share one wall. And so that's very popular, and that's a 45-year-old subdivision. But very small, almost non-existent front yards, but lovely little patios where they can have their flower pots and their tomatoes. And kind of cul-de-sac-y driveways where eight houses kind of come together at one sort of bulb. No alleys, but there's great opportunity for this, and I think we'd be doing our residents a great favor if we offered this kind of diverse housing in Leawood. I wish it were going to be more affordable, but the market will determine the price. We can't do that. I wish we could. But I thank you for the time that you put into this, because I know this was a lot of work, and I think I would like to actually encourage you to move and do whatever we need to do as a governing body to make that zoning category a thing, an official, real thing.
Were you hoping to have direction this evening to go forward and bring back something that could be codified and adopted by a future governing body? I say future because 4 of us will not be here.
Really what we were looking for is direction from the governing body, because this was a goal and we were trying to address that. And so we wanted to get the feedback, and Mayor, as you kind of indicated, if there was support from the governing body, that, a lot of support, then we would go back to the Planning Commission and we'd take a look as far as developing it. But really tonight was just simply to see if we were even on the right path.
One thing I think you have in here, and I think I heard Ms. Harrison say you don't need to be that specific, but the side yard setback being a minimum of 7.5 feet should be absolute, because I live in a development with 7.5, and you do not want it. And the fire marshal will say the same. So some of those things are good, but I think there have been other points, like what Ms. Larson said about perhaps single story, and I think maybe you did too, and some backyard space. I mean, there could be other things that could be discussed if there was a desire to have a work session and even go deeper. I know the Plan Commission did have, I think, a couple of work sessions on this. So, Mr.
Would we invite
Osmond?
James back to the work
I
session?
am 100% behind work sessions as of now. I think they're the best thing. We should have one every other week,
Very productive, very.
starting in January.
But at any rate, well, I'm hearing some ideas that are not part of this, but maybe valuable ideas. So you might want to, before you give the final direction, have a work session, is what I'm thinking. I'm looking at Mayor-elect Elkins in the audience. I'm sure he would love to have a work session.
Maybe combined
4 or
with
5.
planning.
5, yeah, he's nodding his head. 5 will do it.
Mr. Rawlings? Is your mic on?
I think the direction that I'd like to give you is just look at smaller lot sizes and then kind of throw everything else, to the wind as far as maybe some other different ideas or concepts. Maybe the developer has a good idea that you haven't thought of, nobody else has thought of, but the idea that they know that they can have smaller lot sizes, maybe, I think that's the key to maybe moving things off.
And I will second that. Yeah, absolutely.
Simplest solutions are the best.
Yeah.
But I think the developer's input is key.
Yes.
And they're the ones that are going to be paying for it and selling
for
it.
it.
Yes.
So I do think that is very important and shouldn't be forgotten. Yes, Ms.
One of
Phillip.
the things is that when you're looking at a 2-story and you're looking for perhaps aging in place, you want to have the wider, it's not hard to do it when you do the first floor with wider doors. And really, you can have all your living space on the first floor with visitors on the second floor, and then you get the best of both worlds, because usually you still get your grandkids coming by or visitors over the long haul.
Mr. Sippel.
Just to talk a little bit more about the Prairie Village situation, if we went with 5,000 square foot lot sizes, would we be able to preclude someone from going into a neighborhood, tearing the house down and putting 2 smaller houses in that lot? I mean, I think that seems to be one of the issues in Prairie Village.
It depends on how you'd write the regulation. Currently, right now, if you go in with an R1 and an RP1 in an infill situation, that's where you have to be an average of 300 feet as far as the lot size within 300 feet. And if the average is more than an acre, then you'd have to be an acre. RP2 doesn't have that same instance, and so if you recall, Hills of Leawood Villas, in order to kind of get around that average size of lots within 300 feet, they went to an RP2. They came in and they showed the Planning Commission, the governing body, as far as what they were intending, which were larger lots than what an RP2 would have. But it really kind of depends on how you write the regulations, whether you'd have any kind of protection for that.
Thank you.
Ms. Kane?
Not only were they talking double, 2 houses on a lot, they were doubling it up lengthwise too, or depth-wise too. And that's all over Nashville, as an example. So they take these 1 lots where they had 1 house on them, and then they raise them, and all of a sudden you have 4 or 6, depending upon the size of the lot. They're all over Nashville, and it's a sea of concrete, because to get to the houses in the back, you have to drive here, and then you have to drive here. So it just wipes out all the green, but they're everywhere, and that's just an example of where it's happening in one city. So that's what was coming up in PV as an example, and
That's a different set of issues than McMansions, isn't it?
yes, yeah, that's the opposite of a McMansion. Yeah, that's a lot of little whatevers, yeah.
I have confidence in this group and any future group that we would never allow that to happen.
Right.
We would work with staff and our legal counsel and our city administrator, and we would not have people able to do that.
That's what your first example, or your first question was, where would we allow this, right? So if it was some overlay perhaps on a parts of 135th
Well, it's going to be primarily barren ground.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not gonna be a
Greenfield,
development.
I mean, we would have to be uber careful, uber careful, or we could, inadvertently shoot ourselves in the foot.
And currently, right now, we do require that the lots be generally rectangular. We don't allow flag lots, is where you have the situation, you have a large lot, and then somebody lives on this part, and then they run up a driveway, and then have their lot behind it, and then you can get another one, and then you can get quite a bit of concrete that was up front at the frontage. The frontage requirement also helps with regard to that as well.
Yeah, this is happening all over, not to beat the horse, but it's happening all over Portland also, because my son's house in Portland, all of a sudden, the neighbor's gonna build double. And there's nothing to stop it. So all of a sudden, you've, had a backyard and a backyard, and now there's going to be a backyard and a house. And there's nothing he can do to stop it because the zoning can't stop it. So, yeah, we have to be super careful, us and everybody else, or they're going to be all over our metro as well.
Ms. Stoddard, is there any other action on our part this evening that you would like to see? Any other direction other than our thoughts of a future work session?
I can't think of any additional, Mayor. I think the comments this evening have been very helpful.
Okay, very good. Well, Mr. Klein, thank you so much.
Well, thank
I know
you.
you've been
Thanks for
working
your
on
input.
this,
That-
you and
that-
your
that
team,
helps.
for months, and we appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
So, thank you. All right, we have no committee recommendations this evening. We have no old business. We have no new business. So we are adjourned. Thank you.
Excellent.